Sensation and Perception by Alexia Smith. Sensation. Sensation, stimulation of sensory receptors located in the sense organs. Sensation is a big part of the human body because it is used to send sensory information to the central nervous system. We use sensation in different ways, from touch, seeing, pain, hearing, smelling, taste, and many more ways. Sensation is considered a mechanical process. Perception, an active process by which sensations are organized and interpreted. Perceptions help with understanding oneself and other people. Another thing perception is involved in is how you think of the world and your inner representation of it. Perception is considered an active process. Sensory adaptation. One form of sensory adaptation is when a person is always in the dark and starts going out into brighter places. The effect of that is that they are sensitive to light, and the positive adaptation or dark adaptation is what it's called. Another example of sensory adaptation is when you listen to music and start playing it loudly, and you start to have to turn the volume up consistently over time. Negative adaptation. An analysis of adolescents' hazard perception when crossing the road from the perspective of personality characteristics based on eye tracking study. This study pointed out two stages, one being perception and the other being behavior response. The study showed that boys and girls with low sensation were more likely to be aware of the danger around them. It also showed in the study that the boys with high sensation seeking were less likely to be aware of danger. Adolescents with high sensation seeking have stricter judgment criteria and are likely to make more dangerous decisions when they are crossing the road. Girls who have lower sensation levels are less sensitive and can be more cautious when they are crossing roads, unlike those who have high sensation. Another fun fact is that girls, they have lower sensation levels, and they are less sensitive and more cautious, which means that they are not in danger and they pay attention more. And boys are a little bit above that, and they still have those lower sensations, but they are still likely to be in danger just because of how their brains function different from females. Light. Spectrum of electromagnetic energy. The electromagnetic radiation that is distributed to wavelength or frequency. Portions have different names depending on various behaviors in emission, absorption, and transmissions of wavelengths. Visible light, when having the right wavelengths, triggers visual sensations, and that is why we are able to see. Hue, value, and saturation. Hue, determined by, give it a second, determined by wavelength, color. Hue is considered a tint of color and not the color itself. Value, how dark or bright something is. Most people who see in black and white may see something way lighter than another person who may see it darker. Saturation, the intensity of a color. A color could have a hue of black and be darker than a color than a hue of white, which would seem brighter. Another example is if you have a color of Princeton orange, which is very bright and saturated, or you could have an apricot orange, which is more dull and less bright. As someone who is into photography, sensation and perception plays a big role in everything. When you look at photos, you see the image with different hues and different values. Within those different lighting and different soft looks throughout the pictures, having people with different sensations and knowing what they enjoy and what they don't is also difficult. You must understand your model and know if they're comfortable with something or not. Which is like if you have someone who is very, you could have them be really sensitive if you pour water on them, if they shiver and it makes the picture look blurry, or if they have the sensations of an awkwardness, they're not going to be as smiley, they're not going to be as happy and as open and expressive. And then you have different perceptions and you see different values and you just have different experiences within those. Losing one's hand. This study talks about how they experimented with a rubber hand and people's sense of sensation. In the experiment, it talks about how, as if the rubber hand replaced the person's actual hand. The results had them feel mismatched between the seen and felt position of the hand. An example of how this would work is if you had your hand behind your back and someone touched it. It would feel weird and disconnected. Touch and pressure. Touching the skin makes sensory receptors fire, and that is what makes you feel. When you lay in bed or sit in a chair, you constantly have sensory receptors fired. Active touching, when you are constantly touching an object and moving. When you are moving your hand, you feel the texture, the temperature, and the pressure of that object. People can be more sensitive to different pressures in different areas because nerve endings are more densely packed. Fun facts on psychology. Dopamine is why we scroll through our phones so often. Our brains function off the reward process within other parts of our brains. We seek information and the dopamine chemicals go off. You can convince yourself of a crime you didn't commit vividly. People were curious of this and did a case study of it, and only took them 3 hours to convince people they committed a crime. The people who were convinced they committed the crime were able to describe things in vivid detail without even doing it. Is being a smoker worse than being alone for too long? People who are alone for too long often have 50% more likelihood of dying than people who regularly go out. Smoking is one of the ways to get health diseases and create an unhealthy immunity to things. Being alone also commits to these things and could potentially hurt yourself if you're not careful. And here are all of the links and all the resources. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you for watching.